started on.
How many directors are there?
Well, she's done that professionally too on the other side.
Okay, I think we can start.
Just develop a connection.
Well, I'm connected with them.
Okay.
We're connected, right?
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
That's right. There you go.
Oh, we got that.
Take off your shirt.
All right, so we're here today. Tell us what day it is, where we are, and what we...
Today is it Tuesday or Wednesday? Today's Wednesday.
No, it's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, okay? And we're here in New York City at our apartment, in our bedroom, and Jim's gonna be asking me some questions, and I'm gonna be hopefully giving you the answers. I'm Ralph Abrams, and I'm sitting next to my beautiful wife, Judith Abrams, and we've been living here now, 36 years
Yes.
in this apartment. Moved from south in our old age, from 77th Street to 72nd Street. And no view out the window today because of a tremendous fog here in New York City. And, oh, you're giving me some signals, aren't you? Oh, say hello to the people.
Hi, hello.
All right. So we'd like to start with some of your earliest memories. I know from the snake pit as a little kid, some little adventures. I heard some things about you being pretty crazy as a little kid. And Judy, I don't know much about where you grew up in your childhood, so maybe you could talk
Well,
to
he
each
put
other.
shoes on me to bring me to New York, so that starts there. Okay, start with your
True.
beginning.
One of my earliest, my folks moved into the building when it was brand new. I think this was about 1933. The building was built on 84th Street, facing the park. My father says they could have had any apartment in it because it was the height of the Depression, and after you were in for 6 months, you got the next 6 months free, just to move into the building. As I said, the height of the Depression. And my father says, oh, I want to be on the second floor so I can be with the people and see what's going on the street. So we had a corner apartment on second floor, which made it very interesting. Like on one day, I might have been 5, 6 years old, and a man on stilts, when you advertised back in those days, I'm talking the late 30s, early 40s, men on stilts would have boards on them advertising a restaurant or some kind of instrument, and I'm sitting there watching Central Park, and a man on stilts, his head is now equal to me, and I yell, "Mommy, Mommy, quick, come in." And my mother comes in her bra and panties, because I'm the only one in the apartment, and lets out a scream when she sees this man looking at her. So those were some of the interesting things you advertised you could have on being on the second floor. Also, it was my father's birthday, and back in those days, men would go around with what we called a hurdy-gurdy. It was like a small organ, and play music, and people would throw money out, put a couple of pennies in a wrapper and throw it out to them. And it was my father's birthday and had a lot of the family there, so everybody was throwing pennies at this guy, playing Happy Birthday on his gurdy. Other recollections.
I heard something about you thinking you were Superman and jumping out the window when someone grabbed you. Is that true? I have my memory.
No, I knew I threw a chicken bone out, and my mother was yelling at me. I said, "It's okay, I finished the chicken. There was no meat on it." Let's see, other
A
stories.
hot dog in your cheeks.
Oh, I came back from school one day, kindergarten, and my cheeks were bulging out. my mother says, "What's the matter with you? What happened?" And I said, "Oh, the hot dog was so good, I didn't want to swallow it all at once, so I'm savoring it for later." What other stories?
What about you, Judy? You tell us about your earliest.
Well, I was the younger sister of, my brother was older, so all his friends used to come around and I used to like that. They were very nice. And I don't know if I say this, the most embarrassing,
Crazy for men all the time.
the most embarrassing story that ever happened to me was in second grade when the teacher said, "Judy, pick up your chair and bring it to the front of the room." I didn't want to do it. She said, "Judy, pick up your chair and bring it to the front of the room." So I finally did it, but I knew the elastic in my underpants had split, so guess what? It was very embarrassing. My underpants fell down. That's all I can say.
Let's see, other questions.
Well, yeah, you tell us a little bit about, of course I know Bernie and Tess, but tell us about some, your memories of them and what they were like as parents.
They were just great people. I grew up with my sister, who I hated, and I fought, and many times I'd go chasing after her. She would lock herself in the bathroom and wait till the folks got home. And it wasn't until I went away to college that I realized how much I missed her. And we became very close. She was my best friend. Miss her. Can we cut for a minute? Let's see, what other stories? Oh, New York City was completely different. I grew up in the late 30s and early 40s. And when I was 6, 7 years old, my father would give me a quarter. I could walk around the corner to the sundry store where you bought your cigarettes. I remember back in those days, you can also buy one cigarette out of the jar for a penny. Because it was the Depression, and maybe somebody only had 5 cents to spend on cigarettes, and he would buy his 5 cigarettes, and that was it. And I would go around the corner with a quarter and buy my father his Camels. The man knew the entire family, and he knew I was not smoking at 5. And get my 21 cents for the Camels, 4 cents for the war cards, which I still have. Of course, they portrayed what was going on in the Second World War. I never got the card that had Hitler addressing the Reichstag, which I understand was worth several $1,000s, but I never got that in the wrapper.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and chewed a lot of bubble gum, which came in handy because across the street from us was a bus stop. And over the bus stop was the grill for the subway station. And people going into the bus, because you paid a nickel to get on the bus, would sometimes drop change down. And so I take my father's sinker for fishing, which weighed 3, 4, 5 ounces, put it on a string, take out the bubble gum, put it on the stinker, and try and bounce it on the coin that's down below and bring it up very slowly.
How much money did you make?
Not a lot. I mean, if I came home with 10 cents after a whole afternoon of dunking it on it, I was considered very successful. How was the city different? One night, I don't remember if it was policemen or detectives, ring the doorbell while we're having dinner. What was the matter? My name was taken down because I was playing ball on a lawn along with Dickie Moore and Dick Sonnet and so all my buddies. Back in those days, they could come and visit you to complain that your son is playing ball, you know. And I could walk around the corner. It was so safe. When I was 5 and 6, when I was 21, the side street, 84th Street, was considered one of the most dangerous streets to be on in New York City. It was written up in a novel that was popular at that time. I think it was a novel based on West Side Story. And the gangs, it was then Puerto Rican gangs, controlled the street. And I did not go around the corner at night by myself when I was 18 or 19.
So Columbus Avenue.
To Columbus Avenue.
Yeah.
Also, Columbus Avenue, now you have famous designer clothing stores. Back in those days, on the one street, east side of the street, between 84th and 83rd, was your butcher, your vegetable store, your fish store, and an A&P. And that
Okay.
was how you did your shopping. And during the war, of course, you got coupons for meat. And my father comes home one night, and there's the butcher sitting on the couch having a scotch, because he said he'll make the last delivery. And my mother said, please come in and have a scotch, be friendly with him, because if you're going to have a party and you need meat, you better know that butcher pretty well. That was New York City at that time. I do remember the L running down Columbus Avenue. And the L was taken down in 39 and 40, and all the steel from the elevated elevators, went to Japan, and they knew about it, because if there's an unexploded bomb or shells around, they could see the markings from New York City on the casings and so forth, and that's how they knew that all that steel that went down from the subways went to Japan. And during the war, my effort was, they had a big display of Army in Central Park, on that mall that's by Bethesda Lake, by the lake there. And so I went out with my shoe shine kit, offering to shine any soldier's shoes free. And that was my contribution to the war.
Okay, so Bernie was in the millinery, I guess, right? He making little things for hats and shoes and.
Repeat that.
His sisters made it for him. He would bring home scraps of leather. They would make ornaments out of it, and he would sell it to the millinery. And then came 1930, or right around that time, heart of the Depression. DuPont invented something called oilcloth. You put it on top of your table, and you could spill milk and water on it, and it would just wipe off. And it was a great item to make hats with, rain hats. And my father became the distributor for DuPont. Now, DuPont was not interested in selling 5 yards to Nelkin, who made hats, or 4 yards of a different color to Workman, who made hats. So my father would store rolls of this, and when people needed oilcloth, they had to come to Bernie Abrams. He had the exclusive right in New York. Then oilcloth got a little too big, but he had a great season in the millinery, a couple of seasons, being a distributor for DuPont. And then oilcloth became an item that all the stores would carry, and so they didn't need him. But it was good years for Dad.
Okay.
And I remember my mother saying, she's gonna go into the stock market. And she went in and bought AT&T the week before it crashed. And she says, I've learned my lesson, I'm not going into the stock market ever again. But that was an interesting story about her going into the market.
I'm curious how, like, as a teenager, your dad had this business. Did that influence you, what you wanted to do when you grew up? What were your dreams of?
At first, it influenced me that I wanted to go back to camp, and my father says, you're too old, you're going to work for me as a delivery boy, and I went to work for him as a delivery boy when I was about 14 or 15, and that was the end of my camp seasons, which I did then for the next couple of years every summer as a delivery boy. But I did meet somebody very interesting. Another delivery boy was a black man from Jamaica called Emil Griffith. Emil Griffith became I think it was welterweight champion of the world. So that's who I was associating with. And I remember when Emil Griffith fought Perez, Judy and I got tickets, and a lot of the millinery people were down there because it was an owner of a millinery manufacturer that during the war was a boxer, and then found this guy, Emil Griffith, gave him a job and trained him. And trained him pretty good because he became the welterweight champion of the world, and he was fighting Perez. And it was hysterical. You had two elderly, heavy-set black women in two different corners yelling at each other before the fight started. And they were their mothers. And second, third round, Emil Griffith clobbers Perez, and he goes down. And Judy's yelling, oh my God, he killed him. I said, honey, just wait. He's going to jump up and go back to his corner. He never jumped up. And they carried him out, and 2 days later he died. And Judy said, don't ever take me to a fight again. But that was a story, interesting story.
So you ended up getting in the shoe business.
Right.
I mean, was that somehow
Yes.
related to Bernie? Or, I mean, what
Yes,
he did?
a very distant cousin of my father had a shoe business, manufacturing here in New York. Believe it or not, shoes were made here in New York City. Better shoes. Cheaper shoes were made in St. Louis, but their American shoes were what you wore. And I went to him, and it was rough going there because I was a person of all trades. He wanted to teach me the business. And the person that opens the mail in the morning knows what's going on. So naturally, when Carl brought the mail in from the post office, I had to be there to go through it and sort it and know what's going on. And then, of course, the boss said, it does me no good to come in and see these letters on my desk asking questions if I can't answer them and get them off my desk. So that meant now, instead of at 8 o'clock coming in, I came in at 6:30, because Carl picked up the mail that early and brought it in. And I could go through the book, seeing where the shoes were in production, or get him his answers, and he liked it better because he could get it off his desk. And then, of course, he always wanted to know what I did for during the day, and the heads of each division in the factory, packing, so forth and so on, would come in and have a drink with him. And, well, who was going to serve the drinks? So I was there, so taking the drinks off his desk after he left and putting them in the sink. And I had long days. I remember coming home one night. We didn't have any children. We had an apartment for $88 a month.
Including electricity.
Including electricity. The Petersfield on 21st Street and 2nd Avenue. $88 a month. No view. Living room. Oh, in her 8th month, Judy couldn't fit into the kitchen, so you get an idea of the apartment. And I come in, must have been about 7 o'clock, and I have my coat on, it's winter time, and she yells, "Sit down, sit down!" For a special treat, she made me chicken pago. And she had already cooked it, figuring me home at 6:30. So I sit down with my coat on, she brings in the pot, turns it over to put it on my plate, and nothing came out of the pot. It was stuck with something. But that was growing up in New York back in those days.
Okay. So Jude, I know, you got into banking, but what did you do before the banking, and what is there something about like that your parents did, your dad, that got you into what you did for a bit?
Well, actually, it was my husband, Ralph, because he loved the stock market, and I didn't know anything about the stock market. So I had the summer off from school, and I went to work at a company as a Girl Friday or whatever, and I got involved in it, and I liked it again, and I thought, wow, maybe I'd like to have this as a career. So I remember going to someone in Merrill Lynch and interviewing, and they said, well, how do you think you'll get your clients? I said, oh, my friends. And they said, wrong. That's not how you get friends. That's how you don't keep friends. So I thought about that and decided that was not for me. So then I decided I still wanted to know about the stock market. So I got a job, Merrill Lynch, sorry, who did I work for, Ralph? Morgan Stanley, I'm sorry. They were just starting their research department, and they hired the best researchers in the country to start up. And I interviewed with them, and they wanted me to have a sales position. I said, no, I don't think that's what I want. I'd rather do research. So they called me back. And I got research for the 2 leading technology people in the country, analysts in the country. And now, Morgan Stanley was all men, and there were secretaries who were women. And so I said, well, I'll take the job, but I really want to learn more. And then I thought about it. Well, how am I going to learn more? I'll get an advanced degree, knowing nothing. So there was one other junior woman analyst there, and she advised me to go to corporate to interview, and said I want to go for my MBA. So as it turns out, they approved me, and they paid for my MBA. And I went 4 nights a week, and 4 nights a year, and then 2 summers. And it was really, I met the most fun people. They were wonderful. And at the end of every big exam, Ralph would go to Zabar's and come down with hors d'oeuvres and drinks for everybody in the class. That did help my mark, I must say. So then I did that for a while, and then the stock market fell apart. The devaluation of the pound, well, that was a little later, but it fell apart, and they were all merging, and I didn't know what was going to happen, so I decided to look further, and I thought of banking, because it was sort of relevant. And I don't think Morgan Stanley appreciated that I left them to go for banking, but I did. And that I loved. I was in
Don't forget to tell them a woman could not have her own
Oh, yeah.
bank.
Yeah, so I went to work for a big bank, and then when that all happened, I got a call. Did I want to work at First Women's Bank? And I said, well, I don't know anything about it. And then when the day came, I said, I don't know if I want this, but I went. And there I met a woman called Judy Mello, and she was actually the head of the First Women's Bank. There were 4 5 in the country altogether. And that was so much fun. So I was head of marketing, and of course, there weren't any other people in marketing except me, and Judy was the president, and then the bank started to grow, and it did really, really well. And the one lesson I learned there is we had very few male customers, but we had some that really did it just to, to give a deposit to us. So this one big law firm gave us something like a $40,000 deposit, which was a lot for us. And at the end of the year, I called them, I said, "Hi, is everything okay?" They said, "It's not." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You had our account for a whole year and you never called us." That was a very important lesson for me. I figured they didn't want to be involved. So things went on, and then there was an unfriendly takeover of the bank. And so I left, and I was invited to go to Bankers Trust. Okay, and actually Bankers Trust had their big office across from First Women's Bank, but I actually went to the main office. I had a choice. And I loved Bankers Trust. I loved the clients. I loved the people. And it was a wonderful kind of career for me because I grew to be a really senior manager. So I was the center, and I get all the people, the lending officer and the investment people, and to be around me. And at one point they asked me if I would go to Florida, would I run the Florida office, because it wasn't doing that well. I said, "I won't do that, but I'll go for like 3 or 4 months a year." And
3 or 4 weeks, a month.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 months, 2 all together.
Yeah.
From December through April, okay? But then I said, Ralph had just retired and I don't drive. I need somebody, to help drive me around. And they said, well, that was okay. And what happened is a lot of those clients from New York had homes in Florida. And when they were away from New York, they're much more relaxed, and they loved Ralph. He was really my key to success. So we did very well, and I just loved my career. So that was basically.
So how old were the kids, like, when you started this? Did you start this after, or what?
Some of them were out of the house.
Hold on, not yet. Let me,
No, but how could I have left the kids alone? I didn't leave the kids alone.
And it was 70,
You
80.
had Ivy.
Yeah, but I didn't leave them for.
No, we were in college.
Yeah, they were in college.
They were in college at that
Yeah,
time.
they were in
So,
college at that time.
So up until that time, you didn't work?
I did.
You,
I started to work, I guess when I graduated from, no, I was working when I went to school to get my MBA. I was working, and I remember coming home
She always worked.
yeah.
no, I mean, before the kids were growing up.
When the kids were growing up, yes, I had some help in the house. And I remember one day I said, "I have a great idea." And they all said, "Well, what's that?" I said, "Everybody's responsible for a meal once a week. I don't care what it is, we'll leave you money and you have to make the dinner." And it was great. But you know what he did? He bought Chinese food. He cheated. So that was really fun. They learned to cook, and it worked pretty well.
But you waited for Peter.
Right.
Because you always knew something wild was coming. Stephen might make egg salad or something like that, something plain. Peter took the money, bought food, and really went, you could see the spaghetti in the ceiling where it stuck when he would throw it up. But you look forward to Peter's meal that night because it was going to be something different.
No, but before that, we started it, and then he went to this Coney Grant Farm Preserves, and he came home and told us he was a vegetarian. Well, that shot and killed the rest. But actually, that didn't last many years.
So what can you, you raised 3 kids. What can you two tell us about your wisdom for raising kids and today? Like what was your approach? What do you get from having your children?
I'd say you need a lot of luck. You try as hard as you can, and there's not one answer. And you have to have luck along with respect. We think respect is good.
Who are their friends?
Yeah.
What are their friends teaching them? What are their friends doing? What kind of atmosphere? Remember, drugs were really just coming into its fore at that time. And you didn't know.
So were you strict parents, or how would you characterize yourself as your parenting?
I wouldn't say strict,
No,
but I think they knew.
I hit them on their rear end a couple of times, but I didn't have to do it too often. But they were good kids, so we had really no trouble.
I mean, you know, they did their thing, but we were lucky, really. Yeah.
So you were lenient about, like, you let them take care of their homework on their own, or
Yes.
coming and going, you weren't...
Yeah,
like-
we made sure it was done, but we didn't do the homework for them like lots of people do. We didn't do that. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
I remember once Julie did tell me, you know, I think you were a little too lenient for me. You let me stay as long as I want, stay out as long as I want. Well, I was interested about that because I think that, I guess I was not strict enough, you know, but I guess they knew there's some boundaries there.
Peter went to, what was it, the new school? What was the name of the school you went to?
New Lincoln?
New Lincoln? That's where you
No,
both
no,
met?
not New Lincoln, the one before that.
Bank Street?
Bank
Bank
Street, yeah, Bank Street. And Peter was not reading well. We spoke to them and they said, oh, don't worry about it. He'll eventually read fine, just give him time. And I didn't like that answer, so I went to my old school and said, give me a list of what my son should be reading by now. I got a list of 100 books. And I said, Peter, I want you to read these 100 books. And what would you like in return? And he said, a snake. And I said, fine. And he started really reading the books and enjoying them, you know, and got to Zane Grey, who had one book on this list of 100. And came to me and says, can I read more Zane Grey? I said, sure. Take a couple more read before you go on to something else. And we got a snake, or he got a snake, and we lost it someplace in the house. We don't know where it is.
And we still have people would never come to our house again. They were so scared of snakes. Dworsky, she was never coming to our house again.
And then Peter went on to graduate to tarantulas, which he got for his group that was going down to, where was it?
Trinidad,
Trinidad.
with the museum,
Right,
American
and he
Museum.
brought back, he would go out at night and catch the tarantulas for all the other people in the group that didn't want to go out at night with a flashlight to catch tarantulas. And he brought home Irving. And Irving was in the house for several years, and then when Peter went to Cornell, he took Irving with him. And then one day he comes back to his room, and his roommate's standing outside. He says, what's wrong? He says, Irving's not in the cage. And a couple of days later, they're screaming on the floor below him, which were all the girls in the dormitory. And he says, there was Irving against the wall. And you know, Irving, well, when it's against the white wall, it looks more like this. And so he kept Irving for a while. Okay, interesting.
So, yeah, tell us, let's back up for a minute and tell us, like, how you first met and your courtship and a little bit about your early days together. You know,
Well, I got a phone, I was a freshman, and everybody gets a big rush when they're freshmen. And so I got a call, and they said, we'd like to fix you up with someone. I said, fine. What's his name? They said, it's Rocky. I said, Rocky? Forget about it. And I said, I wasn't going with him then.
So your friends,
Instead, you went out with Dickie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because
That's how I met you,
That's
then.
right, yes, yeah.
so how did your friend know, how did you know the friend?
No, it was just
fraternity
fraternity
group.
calls the freshman class, and it's just by random, I guess. And they called a lot of the girls and said, we'd
Okay.
like to fix you up. And we have somebody in mind. I don't know, they didn't really know anything. They were just,
It was really a Jewish fraternity calling the Jewish girls.
So your friend didn't know Rocky?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, okay.
No, he might have known Rocky, he didn't know me. The person who called me was the guy from the fraternity, but he didn't know me personally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just happened to get the hat checked.
So that's how people met back then. They-
Yeah. That's true.
You didn't have email.
To describe everything
or
about it.
online. And so
So-
she came to the fraternity house with Dickie Melchner, and I met her there. And then I
You
got-
were with someone else.
You must have been.
I
That's a good
probably
question.
was.
Yeah.
And but once you meet her and see her, what could I be going out with? Hey. So
Did you talk that first dance or whatever? that-
Probably not.
No, what happened is we just, no, you saw me there and then you asked me out, right? And you beat up Dickie Melchner, remember? That's the story he told me.
Well,
I'm sure
he
didn't
beat
really
him up?
I didn't beat him up. No.
Anyway, he tells that story. I guess it's not true. But anyway, so we had a date to meet. We hadn't met before. And I was at Hess Brothers department store and he was waiting downstairs for me to come out. I was having my hair done, right? And he was wearing a V-neck gray cashmere, so I know everything about
I still have it.
Anyway, so that's how we met. And then we
And what was the first, what did you do? You go out to lunch or what?
probably
I didn't do much
took a walk, never mind.
for that year.
And so then he was a
Was
friend.
it in New York that you went?
You know, she had never been in an airplane at that time,
Do you believe that?
and we're driving past an airport, you know, a small country airport. I said, let's go out for a plane ride. I took her out for a plane ride. I must have impressed her.
Oh, I did. I
Okay.
did.
You took her for
Make
a
out.
plane ride?
What?
You know, you can
first-
hire these little
Yeah.
planes, yeah. That was big.
That was one of your
Yeah.
first dates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took a chance with him, you know.
So was it love at first sight or
Oh,
what?
for me it was.
Oh, it had to grow on me.
No, but you were going out with the rabbi at that time, weren't you?
No, that was camp, honey. I was past that.
Oh.
Okay. But he was nice. Also.
So,
I
so
didn't like her rabbi. Ooh,
Oh, that's not a good story.
Ooh.
That was a different rabbi.
yeah, I did a different rabbi.
what happened to the rabbi?
He said, you know.
We had to meet with the custom was to
Judy
meet with.
was far more religious than I was. And he said, do you feel that will be a problem in your marriage, that she is far more religious than I am? I said, it'd be more important to me if she liked the white meat of the chicken also, because that's what I like.
He's a bad boy. He didn't say it in front of him.
Yeah, he was, okay. Stop
Moving
it.
right along, right?
Yeah, so how, was it a year or 2 years and then?
Yeah, because we met, I was a freshman, he was a senior. And then after that, he went to ROTC, right?
No, I never was in
No, you went
ROTC.
to, you went to work? Where did you
I
go?
went
to
to
the
work.
Army.
Yeah, I went to work that summer. And because I didn't go into the Army
Okay,
until December.
Okay, yeah, he went into the Army.
You know, not voluntarily, but I went into the Army. But I fought the good fight. You know, I was in the war. It was called the Cold War, but it was the war. And Germany, I was engaged before I went over, and life in Germany was so great, so many sights to see, and I had a car. I mean, where do you want to go on weekends? Heidelberg, Vienna, Munich. And I called her up on Valentine's Day and says, why wait till I come home? Why don't I come home, we get married, and spend the last 6 months of my Army career over here. You'll love it. And the only trouble was, because the Cold War was heating up. It was the Hungarian Revolution, and we were 30 seconds from the Russian border by air. And we were on the east side of the Rhine, and we knew we could not defend all this territory in Germany in front of the Rhine. So our purpose was to get the hell out of there and back across the Rhine, where would be our first line of defense against the Russians. And so at that time, they said no more civilian wives coming over. We don't want to be responsible for them. So when we got married, realistically, the only thing she was entitled to was a burial in an American cemetery.
And children. Children could be educated there. Of course, we had none, but that was the only thing.
Right. And, you know, of course, being an American citizen, nobody ever questioned her about going into the PX. And Sergeant Martin, who was an old-time sergeant, always threatening to be thrown out because he was so overweight. But they did remember that he made Sergeant Major because he was the only one in his group that survived in Korean War. And he was married to Vern, a showgirl in Vegas. And my folks came to the base to visit the base. And we're going to throw a party for them. And invited all our friends, including Sergeant Martin, who's the first one to show up, but Sergeant Martin. And he rings the doorbell, and my mother goes to open the door. And as she opens the door, Sergeant Martin is having a fight with Laverne and pushes her down the stairs, turns around and says, "Oh, you must be Mrs. Abram. Laverne, get the fuck up and come up and meet the folks." That was typical for the Army. And then my mother kept saying, "You have no hors d'oeuvres, you have no hors d'oeuvres." And we had about 20, 30 people on there. And I said, "Mom, it's the end of the month. You don't advertise that you have enough money for hors d'oeuvres. You buy the liquor and have some cookies and crackers, and that will be it." Boom.
It was fun
quite-
being over there. It was
fun.
wonderful for both of us. I mean, all of his friends came to our house all the time because now they had a place to hang out, and they're all. It was really special.
So, Bernie did very well during the Depression, as opposed
Yes.
to a lot of other people. But he never bought their apartment.
It was never for sale.
It wasn't at that point.
It's a ruin of building, and it's still not for sale.
They won't,
Okay.
They won't convert it.
But
was
you and Judy bought that apartment across from the museum.
Right.
That was your first apartment.
Well, no,
We
we
had a
went in
house.
as a rental.
Oh yeah, we went into as renters. That's right, and then it would turn to be, and we bought it.
It was amazing, the elderly people that did not want it to go co-op.
Well, they didn't understand, you know, and then, whatever.
But it was a great deal.
And then eventually you sold that and bought this place.
After the kids moved out.
Right.
If we
Um,
pushed them, no, they didn't.
And then I kind of have this memory of, you and the beach house. You were renting that for a while, but then at a certain point you bought it, and Bernie didn't want you to buy it.
No.
No.
And it's interesting
What?
because he loved gardening so much. They used to go away in the summer and rent a house, and it was more beautiful when they left.
Okay, so we were talking about, Bernie. They didn't have an opportunity to buy that apartment, but they never. I mean, Tess once told me that he had an opportunity at a certain point to buy Third Avenue, was what she said. I mean, he could have
Oh, yeah.
he could have had
Any apartment you wanted, any
Anything.
block you
And
wanted.
each side was
Yeah,
half
it's easy.
popping, yeah.
Coulda, shoulda, didn't.
right, and
Yeah.
but he also gave you, he had an opinion about you buying things about
Yeah.
like.
I
what was
think
that?
it was the European mentality for Jews. You never know when you have to get the hell out of there, that you don't settle in one place and not have to worry about being thrown out. And I think that was his mentality of never buying. We would rent houses every summer. Oh, you don't buy a house. You just rent it for the summer. And he got to think a little annoyed when I bought the house out of the beach.
Yes.
And he loved it. And they never said anything about the apartment. Well, they weren't involved in buying our first apartment. the building was going co-op, and we were in the building, so it wasn't that I was going out looking to buy something. It just happened to fall into our lap, which was very fortunate, because it increased in value tremendously, that I could buy a smaller apartment for a lot more money.
Yeah. All right, but so he went along eventually with
Yeah.
with everything. I mean, that you did. So I mean, your life has been characterized by all these really close friendships. I mean, I know you had friendships from going way back,
Right.
and you know that's been a huge part of the culture, your social life. Talk a little bit about some of those friends. I know you had a thing with some friends going to Bali for years.
Yeah.
And you've lost, I know, many of these friends. Talk a little bit about some of these deep friendships. And my mom was involved, I think, with some of these friends.
Yeah, oh, we love your mom so much.
Dick was my oldest friend. We met when we were 7, 8 years old and walked to
Dick
PS9 together.
Son,
Yeah.
And one day, Saturday, he calls me up. Can I bring him a quarter? He's over at the Loews 83rd Street Theater. I go over, and what did he need the quarter for? He was shortchanged because they had raised their prices. Who was he with? Lois Solmanowitz, my girlfriend. The first girl that I played Spin the Bottle with and collected in a closed closet. Well, he was a good friend, better than Lois Solmanowitz, so I gave him the quarter. Took her to the movie. We both dumped her afterwards.
Where is she today?
I don't know where Lois Solmanowitz is today.
but in that moment, you were
Good friend.
Very good friends. One more story about Dick. Audrey and Bill were married, and they came to New York, and we're having a dinner celebrating their being in New York. We haven't seen them in a while. And who would you have for that dinner? Well, of course, Dick. He was close to our family. And there was a little drinking going on. And so we started to make toasts. And so glad to have you back in New York for a while, and so forth and so on. And Dick gets up and says, "Here's to Audrey, the girl I thought about when I masturbated." And Audrey gets up and says, "Of all the toasts here, this has got to be the finest." Well, that's our relationship that we've had. Go on, tell another story.
Tell the one about Jim driving.
Oh, yes, driving the car.
The folks rented a house up in Wilton, Connecticut. And I drove the car for Dad, his car, and we were going, I think, to the station to pick somebody up. And Jim was there. I guess Liz and Bill were there too, and Jim was there. And since I was driving to the station, I'm smoking. I grab Jim and put him on my lap and have him do the steering. You know, I'm gonna be very careful and have my hand close by. And you must have been at least 2 years old. And we're driving down the road, and I said, "How would you like a puff?" And I put a cigarette in his mouth, so he has a cigarette in his mouth, and all of a sudden, it must have stuck the paper to his lips, and I get frantic, and I take it out, but I let go of the wheel, and we knock a telephone pole over.
And what happened next?
He didn't do any more driving that weekend.
What happened? Nobody's hurt? No,
No, I think my folks paid for a telephone pole.
in the car?
The fender was really not that dented. I mean, it had to be a pretty rotten telephone pole to start with, which it probably was, and it knocked it over. That was fun.
Okay. Let's see. So you've been married how many years now? 60?
No,
60s?
We were married in 57. So
66,
60.
7.
66, 67 years.
Yeah.
So Franny and I are now engaged to be married. Tell us your words of wisdom for having
Just remember two
as-
words.
He
a
says
good relationship.
Yes,
Okay.
dear.
And I would say you really have to have a sense of humor. You really have a sense of humor, and you have to communicate. You really do. Those are the things I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're living in these crazy times. Trump has been elected here. I know you have a close friend who's out at the beach, who's you're close with, and he's of a different persuasion.
Right.
What are your views on the future here with how to deal with this, and what are your thoughts about these times?
I think we have to wait and see a little bit. We really don't know, but I think lots of us are on tenterhooks, very nervous about what could happen. But I think in the meantime, we have to keep doing what good things we can do. It doesn't have to always be with politics, but people are suffering mentally too a lot from this. And I think any way you can support someone is helpful. Just walking on the street and you see someone sort of down, and if you say hello, their whole face brights up. Now that's not going to sell world politics, but it won't hurt it. So when you can't do anything bad, just there are other good things that you can do.
And you're still close with your friend at the beach?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Did you
And
have?
that was very harder for me. We were always and I really loved his wife, who now has dementia, but we still can get together. But when he put those big signs up, it was really hard for me. But I realized there's so many good things about this man. He's been mayor of
Atlantic Beach.
Atlantic Beach. His wife has dementia. I have never known anyone to do as much as he has. He put in an elevator to go up the stairs so she would come downstairs. She didn't want to come down. He put this big bathtub, they advertise on TV now, you walk in the bathtub. He did that for her. I mean, he so loves her, and he has a great relationship with his kids, but there's a big sign in his house, no politics, so they're definitely not Trump people. And he's just been a fabulous neighbor. I have to tell this one story. Of many years ago, Andrew, who was our grandson, and Ralph and Stephen were out at the beach house, and for a gift, Andrew had purchased tickets for a fishing boat. So Emily, Stephen's son, and I were the only women there at that time. So they went off fishing, and then all of a sudden, the toilet started to overflow. And I didn't know what to do, and she didn't know what to do. So I said, just go across the street diagonally and knock on the door and say,
Are you John?
Are you John? And he said, yes. My grandma sent me. I can't turn the toilet off. Could you please come over? And he did, and he fixed it, and that's what he does all the time. But now, fast forward, she must have been 6 then. Now she's 30 years old, and now when they moved from Mesa, Arizona, is now moved from Arizona. They stayed in our apartment for 6 weeks until they got settled here.
No,
And-
our beach house.
On our beach house, I'm sorry, I meant the beach house, right? And John was there helping him once again. They broke the door by mistake, leaving after all her packing thing. I said, well, just call John. And she said, John, you remember me? I knocked on your door 20 years ago. So it comes around, goes
Yeah,
around.
and then they left to go to Inwood, but the door on our beach house is fixed.
Yeah, he broke, and he got all no hardware for it. We didn't know. I finally said to him, John, did something happen? Did you get to fix the door? He said, oh yeah, I bought all the stuff I left you. I mean, he's just a wonderful friend, so
Yeah.
that's how we feel about him.
Okay. So I know this has been, a rough year health-wise. And we're all getting older. But you're always so upbeat, it seems, no matter what.
I still have her.
Tell us a little bit. Can you give us some words of wisdom for growing old and dealing with it gracefully?
Tell the story you just told some woman on the bus.
Oh, yeah. I'm now in what people call the golden age. Let me tell you about the golden age. It stinks. And all the people that tell you good stories, they're bullshit. That's my philosophy. That's my experience. Go ahead, tell me yours.
About you?
Yeah, you have to put up with
Not
me.
here. No, he's been really amazing with all he's gone through. I do have to say that's true. It really is. And he's always wakes up in the morning, and how are you? He said, I feel great, no matter how he feels. He says that.
And
So-
bring me my coffee.
Yeah.
And I
And his
will.
coffee, yeah.
Okay.
Anything? I guess I know you have 3 kids and all these grandkids, and they're all so different individuals, all of them. And they all grew up under your roof, but your kids are so different, and the grandkids are so different. Do you sometimes wonder, like?
I think every
Ha-
parent wonders that when they have more than one child. There's so often that there's a completely different, and they are, but it seems to work. I mean, one of, as you know, Peter did so many things with the museum, when work at the butterfly farm for some time, because of good friends of ours knew somebody in the butterfly farm, and we're always interested in what he's doing. Stephen, when he was growing up, he loved sports, so he would go down toward Madison Square Garden, and he would wait for all the players to come in and get their autographs. And what did one of them say? Oh, you were Peter Maravich. You want to tell that story?
Oh, he calls me in the office and he says, I got Pete Maravich, who you wouldn't know that name, but he was a young basketball player and considered the best ball handler in the entire basketball teams. Could dribble around anybody. And he says, I got his autograph, and he asked me if I was going to go to the game tonight. And because they knew where the players were staying, so they'd go and wait at the hotel and get their autograph. And Pete Maravich says, I'll leave you 2 tickets for the game tonight. And he calls me at the office and he says, which was on Empire State Building, 34th Street, Madison Square Garden, right down there. And it wasn't Madison Square Garden, it was the college. What was that down there at 34th Street?
Yeah, the forum?
Yeah, the garden.
The garden.
Garden.
Didn't I say that?
Yeah. And so I said, I can't talk to you now, meet me in my office at 6 o'clock. We'll walk over. If he doesn't leave you the tickets, don't be disappointed. We'll go to the game. And we walk over, and he says, Dad, go get the tickets. He left them for you, not me. And he comes back with this big smile and 2 courtside tickets. And I see him go down at halftime while Maravich is taking foul shots, and he gives him the sign and so forth and so on. A couple of weeks later, I'm in Atlanta waiting for my luggage. Who should be at the next carousel? The Atlanta Hawks were the Atlanta Hawks. And I see Maravich. And I go over and I said, Mr. Maravich, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Ralph Abrams. You left tickets for my son at the Garden, and I thank you very much. I went with him. And he says, that pain in the ass is your son? I said, yes, Mr. Maravich, that pain in the ass is my son. He says, can't you afford a haircut for him? And I said, Mr. Maravich, when you get a haircut, he'll get a haircut. Because all he does is emulate you. Yeah, Maravich had long, wavy hair. And with that, he goes, right on, man.
He broke his shoulder.
And that was my experience with Pete Maravich, who died at a very early age.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kids today would not know, but he was considered the finest ball
I
handler
remember.
in basketball.
You had some other run-ins with celebrities, didn't you? Out in Vegas or something?
In Vegas.
Some beautiful woman or something?
Oh,
or-
no, he's talking about when he's in the Army, and he was in, were you in, with Kim Novak?
Oh, yeah. I get a weekend off. I'm in
Colorado?
Colorado. What was the name of the
Bradhurst?
town?
Colorado Springs?
Yes,
Yeah.
Colorado Springs.
So I decide I'm going up to Denver, and I check into the Brown Palace because I'm not a big fish eater, but they are known for their Rocky Mountain trout. And I'm gonna have dinner there. But first, I get myself a beer and I lie in a bathtub all afternoon because that's a luxury. Instead of showering with
Oh, he was in the
other
Army
guy.
at the time,
Yeah, I'm in
yeah.
the Army. This is a weekend off. And I go down to the bar and I said, I'm gonna have a dry martini. I said, no, because you wouldn't know how to make it. Yeah, I'm a wise guy. And he says, I'll make it. If you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. That's a deal. And he pours the vermouth into a glass, shakes it around, pours it out, and then pours the gin at that time in. Perfect. So I have two. And all of a sudden, there's tremendous commotion around me. And who's sitting at the next to me? Kim Novak, with a dress cut down to here. And around her are all the newspapermen because she's having dinner before going to a promotion of a movie. And I guess they know who Kim Novak is. Gorgeous. And what she was wearing almost left nothing to the imagination. Well, I'm not going to give up that goddamn seat. So I now have my third drink. And, you know, I casually lean back and drink and put it down. I have the best seat in the house. And after about 15, 20 minutes, I'm going back. And I fall down. Chair and all fall down.
Nobody caught you, honey.
No, nobody caught me. But then, of course, I had 10 newspapermen pick me up and the chair, and I said, I think I've had enough. Threw a couple of dollars on the table and walked into have dinner. And that was my experience.
With Holly.
Kim Novak probably didn't even know that I fell down, but that's besides the
You
point.
never,
Yeah,
never
that was
said
my
anything,
experience
so-
with Kim Novak.
okay.
Okay.
You didn't get her number.
No, I didn't get her. She didn't get mine either. So we were even.
Okay, well, have any parting words for
Oh,
your,
Julie, we have to say what Julie did. She was in numismatics, and her final year in college.
what is that, Numis?
Called
The coins.
Coins. Anyway, he had a course called Real World Economics, and when it was over, she said to her professor, he used to come once, he said to her professor, I really like what I heard. I'd like to, she didn't want to be.
Hold on, this is what, 6?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
Take 6, they keep messing up. No, Tony. Okay.
Okay, so we were talking about Julie.
Julie, yeah. So Julie was a senior at UVM, and it was a business course, and they had a visitor every month from different types of business. And one day she had someone come his name was Bernie Rome, and he was ahead of his time, and he wanted to find a way to have the coins sealed in plastic, enclosed in plastic, so that they could be photographed. And instead of you having to handle the coin, you could tell everything by TV or by photo. So she became so she called him, she said to the professor, I really was impressed with him. And he said, well, he lives in New York, why don't you call him? So she did. She called him and she said, Mr. Rome, I enjoyed what I heard. Any way I could be working for you. He said, I didn't think about hiring anybody, but come right in. The day after she graduated, she went there, and she's been in that business ever since. And she's been president of companies and very well known in the industry today.
Yeah.
So just you have to say, if you feel something and you want to ask a question, don't be embarrassed, just ask the question. They can only say no.
Yeah.
So.
Well, before we get into closing remarks, we have Peter here, and I know there's some really interesting stories about this guy.
That can be told.
Well, some of them can't be told, but maybe you could share some of them. I know of many. You know, the thing with him lending his car to someone in San Francisco, and then
Oh, that was so heartbreaking.
or the trip up Mount Mansfield.
Oh my God, we almost lost him.
Right.
We almost lost him.
What
Yes, there are lots of stories
Lots
I
of stories.
buried.
you want to share any Peter?
Well, the
stories?
one that he was up in the mountains with his very, very good friend,
William Scott.
William Scott. Thank you. They were visiting you at first,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
and they said, we think we'll go up into the mountains. It was springtime, right? And I think we'll go up into the mountains. So they went up into the mountains, and the snow was melting, and it became very, very cold. And Peter couldn't go any further. So his good friend, Scott, left him and went down to get help and saved his life. That's really true.
And the next call we get,
What was that?
he was in the hospital. Didn't we fly up?
No.
No,
You got the phone call at 2 in the
We got-
morning
we got the phone.
saying that your son may or may not make it. And you drove up and you met me at the hospital.
Yeah.
You can tell now.
Vividly, yes.
Fun.
And what was the other one, Jim?
Well,
Refresh our memory.
I thought it was the Volkswagen in San Francisco.
When he
And-
lent his car to somebody, and
and-
he said, sure, you can borrow my car. And then what happened? He drove away with the car,
Right.
and all his memories and phone numbers and all these people that he's met throughout his life, he kept this little
And
book.
then I remember, we were in Santa Fe,
Yeah,
and then he hitchhiked to Santa Fe, and we took him to a flea market because he didn't have any clothes.
oh, I believe that. I didn't know it, but I believe it, yes.
Yeah.
And
We bought him some clothes, some used clothes, so we had
did he ever
something.
pay you back? By the skin of his teeth, that's how he...
And any stories about Odds and Bill that you can?
Oh, I think Bill. Oof.
So many. She had the best taste.
Let's wait for the siren to go by. Okay.
Everything in any home we've owned has always had her touches, which made them special. She truly just knew what. A good story about that is when your parents died, Ralph, and Ralph and Audrey went to the apartment, and Ralph said, did you tell the story yet? No.
I don't think so.
Okay, Ralph said to Audrey, there's nothing I want in this entire apartment but one thing. And she said, yeah, what is that? She said, that painting of you over the fireplace. And what did she say?
Screw you, take it, I'll take the rest.
And then there was one little painting, you'll see there's a little painting that was a little
We
priceless.
divided everything up.
With many,
She said, I love that round table in the dining room. I said, take it. And we went through the apartment, sell it, I don't want it either. Boom, boom, boom.
well, I want to say one thing before you get through. There was one thing that we didn't know what anyone would do with it, the break front, that was always in their living room, and Audrey said, take that, it'll be perfect in your living
With
room.
everything in it.
We wouldn't think
Because
it
it
would possibly,
represents the folks.
we didn't think it would possibly fit. She's so smart. And you can see it's in our living room,
Perfect.
and it makes the living room, it really does.
Yeah.
But there's one part of the other story I'm going to tell.
I was going to tell the one about Stephen.
Oh, what is that?
He was always in business, getting tickets for shows, the rock and roll
Concerts.
and the
Oh, concerts.
concerts that go on in New York, and selling them at ridiculous prices. And a big show was coming to New York, and he was online outside of Madison Square Garden, the new one. And it was getting late. And I went down and I said, Stephen, enough. You go home. I'll wait, take your place online, because it was right in the front. And I promise you, I'll get tickets for you, but you go home, have dinner, and do your work. And line goes forward. I get up to the ticket agent. I get two, and then somebody pushes me. Of course, they're trying to get in. And I'm the only person over 50 on this line. They're all young kids. And he pushes me, and I go against the wall, and a policeman comes up and he says, what happened to you? He says, I was online. This kid pushes me out of the line. And with that, he parts the line, puts me right up to the front. I got Stephen 4 more tickets. And no kid has ever admired his parents that he admired me that night coming home with 8 tickets. That was with Stephen. Always. Oh, he also made a plaster case of a face.
A skull.
And put a flower through it. Who was it?
Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead.
The Grateful,
Grateful Dead. And sold them. He was an entrepreneur from the very beginning.
All right. Well, I have a final question. How would you like to be remembered?
Respected, even though I told jokes, and loving. How about you, hon?
I have so much gratitude for the life that I've had with my husband, with my family, and in the world. I've really been so lucky and dodged several bullets, but every day we get up and we say, we made it. And really, we've been very, very lucky. I really feel that way. And our love is still there, whatever. What do you say about that?
I agree. Yes, dear.
Anything you say.
Okay, is that a wrap?
So you
Okay,
asked,
so-
someone asked about Germany, how I felt, how I personally felt, and I did feel a little strange going into Germany after all that had happened. But we lived on, which means we had a little house that we shared with another couple who's from Wisconsin, who I don't think had ever seen a Jewish person before. So there are a lot of tales we heard. But it was wonderful because Ralph had already been there a couple of months when I joined, and he had all these friends from the barracks who used to come out and spend time when they had time at our house, so it was a lot of fun for all of us.
And I met two of my closest friends after I got out. We were in a battalion of about 800, and there were two Jews. Hano, who didn't profess to be Jew, and me, who would go through and find out about Jewish holidays I never knew existed, because if they were going to allow a certain amount of Jews off for that holiday, hey, I got it made. And I found no racial discrimination, because how do you have a riot? 799 people against one. So I was safe. And Germany was a wonderful experience. Being away from all the families and starting on our own.
Yeah, it was
With
perfect.
the big decision on the weekend. Do you want to go to Heidelberg or do you want to go to Munich? Or do you,
So the places in the war that represented, such horror for Jews, I mean,
I was not near them.
You were
I was
not
not near any concentration camps that we knew of. Or they weren't the big ones that people would come over from the States to look at and see what was going on. There were none around in our area. This was southern Germany, I guess fairly near the Swiss border. And it just was a fantastic experience.
yeah, okay.
What year was that?
57, 56, 57.
58, 57, 58.
Look at Jim and say the year that we were there
Oh
was.
yeah, when were we there, Ralph? Do you remember the years we were
I
there?
graduated in 55, 56, and 57.
Yeah,
We were there.
yeah.
And it was the Hungarian Revolution. And the Cold War was really heating up at that time.
Yeah.
Could not go to Berlin because Berlin was isolated and they didn't want extra traffic going in. They needed the space for food and so forth and coal and so forth. So we could not go to Berlin. People in Berlin stayed in Berlin, the soldiers, and we could not go in. And couldn't go across the border to Germany either, to other Eastern Germany.
I will tell you one story that we met these women whose husbands were in the field, and Ralph was supposed to be going the next day. And so they came by the next day and they said, "We came to get your husband." And Ralph said, "Tell them that I'm not." Ralph came home and they didn't know that. And he said, "Tell them somebody else came home." That he didn't know what he looked like, right? He said, "We're not going to go to the field today." Of course, that was another one of his wonderful
Give them
stories.
something to talk about.
But that's a terrible thing to end on, Ralph. Let's think of something better.
All right, well, we're back up for one moment. So when you first met Ralph, you mentioned the sweater,
Yeah.
but then there was something about the nails.
Oh, yeah, these long nails.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't polished, but they were long.
So how long are we talking?
Oh,
Well, longer than normal. No, not for me. I don't
it
know.
was normal for me. It wasn't for
Normal,
her.
but they,
Give us the question though, when I first met him.
when I first met him, I think I might have already mentioned, he was outside smoking a cigarette with his gray cashmere V-neck sweater, but he had these long nails. Well, that had to change, and it did, right?
Yeah, I cut my nails.
You got clipped.
And you, Rocky, you know, you said you fell in love immediately with Judy, but can you expand on that a little bit? What was it, you know, what did you?
Have you looked at her?
I,
Have you ever had a conversation and explored her brain? Yes, dear. Yeah, I did. Fell in love immediately. So and then I would say, so love.
That was my last name was Solo.
oh, right.
We tried.
Yeah, yeah.
And the only thing we really didn't cover, Judy, was some of your family, Mark and your parents. So,
Oh, well, Mark,
if-
my brother Mark was stationed in France when we got married, and he couldn't come home. But we met him in Paris, and he had a little Fiat car, and we drove all around Paris and France in the car, and we had such a wonderful time. So it was special for all of us, but we were disappointed at first. And also, I'll tell you another thing, he never studied anything but Spanish as a language, but living in this little town of Perigord, he picked up the language beautifully, and he was spouting French, and I was a minor in French, so I was so excited. So I get off the plane, and I'm talking to one of the people there, who was one of the officers or something, and I'm spouting my French, and he said to me, "You must be an American school teacher," because my accent was so terrible. But we made it through, didn't we? We made
Yeah,
it through.
yeah, it was fun having him over there
It was really
and
fun.
having dinner with him.
Yeah.
okay.
Good.
I think we're good.